And for our final speaker, we have Samhita Karnati with Lost in Translation, Bridging the Hiring Gap with Data Science. Um, a little bit about her. Samhita is a product manager at Handshake, the leading career search platform for early talent. She helps transform the recruiting experience for millions of students by providing the most relevant and personalized internships and job opportunities. She graduated from Princeton University with a degree in computer science and worked as a data engineer prior to switching into product. And without further ado, I'll hand over the presentation to you.
All right, thank you, Miranda. I'm going to share my slides. So let's see. Can everyone see my slides? Cool.
Yep.
All right. So thank you all for attending my session today, and huge thank you to QuarkWorks, Miranda, Hannah, and everyone there for helping to organize and host this event. I'm going to first introduce myself and Handshake before I explain one of the problems that we've been working on. I'll then explain our solution and then wrap up with some key takeaways that I hope will be more broadly applicable to anyone else who's facing similar challenges. So like Miranda said, I graduated from Princeton in 2018 with a degree in computer science, and I began working at Handshake immediately afterwards. I was first a data engineer, and I helped build the infrastructure that supports all of our features that rely on data. And while I was working as a data engineer, I realized the scale of the data that we're working with at Handshake and how powerful it could be. I wanted to work more on features that our end users, specifically our students, would actually interact with. And so I switched into product management. I worked with our data team a little bit, and then I worked with our mobile team, which is when I got to work with Evan and like some other awesome Android engineers at QuarkWorks. And then now I'm working on a squad that is focused on getting smarter about our student users so that we can provide them the most relevant job opportunities. Handshake is the #1 way that students find internships and jobs, and our mission is to democratize access to opportunity so that students can get their dream job regardless of who they know or where they went to school. We are a 3-sided marketplace with students who are looking for jobs, employers who are looking to hire, and career services who are working to facilitate this hiring process. Working on marketplace products come with a lot of really interesting challenges, and one of them is the basis for this presentation. We have more than 7 million active students and alumni, more than 500,000 employers who are recruiting for talent, and more than 1,100 schools in our network. So all the interactions between these different users in our marketplace are the basis for the incredible amounts of data that we have to work with. So after I shifted to product, one of the things that I've loved doing is participating in user research, and not just with our student users, but also with our employer and education partners. One avenue to informally do this user research is with our education partners at the yearly directors workshop that Handshake hosts for some of the leaders in the career services space. I got to attend the 2020 workshop in Washington, D.C., and learned about all of the innovative work that our education partners are doing to support their students' career journeys. They interact with our student users every single day, and so it's really exciting to hear about what they think Handshake is doing well and where we could improve and help their students' pain points. One of the directors who was at my workshop table, named Jihan Fernando from American University, said that the biggest challenge that they face is that their students and their employers hiring them speak completely different languages. And as soon as he said that, everyone at the table started nodding in agreement. This was a really interesting statement to me and not a problem that I considered previously, but it really struck a chord with everyone else there. So let's break down what Jihan and the directors were talking about. Say that the hypothetical Apple University brings Dunder Mifflin Paper Company to their campus. Apple University Career Center has assured Dunder Mifflin that their students are going to be great candidates for their entry-level sales roles. Dunder Mifflin typically looks for candidates who have prior sales experience, but they quickly realized that most students don't have internships in sales, which makes sense because they also know that most companies don't offer these types of internships. And so relying on past work experience, as they usually do to evaluate candidates, will not be an effective way to source for early talent. So then they decide to get one level more granular and look for students who have negotiation, persuasion, or time management skills. However, they see that the majority of students don't articulate these skills on their Handshake profiles. Instead, they see higher level, more like tangentially related skills like leadership, organization, and public speaking. So what did they do? Apple University assured Dunder Mifflin that their students would be great entry-level sales representatives. So where's the gap? The issue here is that students and employers are not articulating their skills and experiences in the same way. So if we go back to that student's profile, we see that they are a treasurer at Apple University Entrepreneurship Club. So this indicates that they have likely worked with the school to make a budget and negotiate for more money for the club. And this shows skills in negotiation and persuasion, even though the student said that they just had leadership skills given their leadership position at the club. So the student actually does have some of the skills that Dunder Mifflin is looking for. They just didn't know how to articulate it. Zooming out, we see a really similar trend in our data, which indicates that it's a common problem for many of our employers. In the 2020 fall recruiting season, the top skills that employers were searching for on Handshake were sales, accounting, and marketing. However, the top skills that students were putting on their Handshake profiles were leadership, organization, and Microsoft Word. What's even more telling is that there is no overlap between the top 50 skills employers are searching for and the top 50 skills that students are putting on their profiles. When I saw that trend in the data, what Jihan was describing at the director's workshop really clicked for me. When employers can't source early talent based on qualifications, as they typically do for more higher level roles, they get very overwhelmed by the volume of applicants and potential candidates. One of the recruiters at CDW told us during user research that they basically have no qualifications. And so they end up with an ocean of applicants, and it's really hard for them to sift through that volume manually. Given this volume, employers feel like they must use false indicators as a proxy for qualifications. So for sales representative roles in particular, employers end up looking for things like quote unquote relevant majors. At Handshake, we know that major does not equal career and that major is not the best way to source for a good candidate. They also look for GPA cutoffs or whether or not the student is on an athletic team. And these false indicators end up baking a lot of bias into the hiring process. Among students who have indicated that they're interested in sales roles on Handshake, we found that 66% who are athletes are men. And so after digging into this data and after hearing directly from our employer partners and our education partners, who are at the end of the day just trying to hire the best talent and facilitate an equitable hiring process, we knew that there must be a way for Handshake to help facilitate qualifications-based hiring of early talent at scale. There are three ways that we looked into solving this problem. The first was to change what employers are looking for. Our amazing customer success team already does tons of work to educate our employer partners on best practices to equitably hire early talent. So like a distribution channel already exists for this. But one thing that we learned from the director's workshop was that our career services partners want to make sure that students are ready for the workforce should they choose to join it. And this readiness includes being able to talk about themselves and their qualifications at the industry standard. And so we decided not to pursue this option. The next option is to change how students are articulating their skills and work experiences. This is definitely the end goal, as students should know the professional language of the industries that they're interested in joining. And Handshake can facilitate educating students on how to do this, much like how career services departments are already doing that. But to do so, we still need to create a bridge from where students are currently at in their language to the industry language of our employers. And so that brings us to option 3, which is connecting the dots between what employers say they're looking for and how students are describing their skills. So like I mentioned before, one of my favorite parts about working at Handshake is the data that we have. We have enough scale where finding patterns is not only feasible, but also incredibly helpful for tackling these types of problems. We've already made use of the scale by creating quote unquote master languages, or what we call taxonomies, that we use throughout the product. Our first major taxonomy was around job role groups, which allows us to standardize types of roles like software engineer or accountant. To illustrate this, take, for example, these roles that employers might be hiring for. We have CPAs, cost accountants, fund accountants, auditing interns, forensic auditing interns. We've created a master language to simplify talking about these postings and group them all into an accountants and auditors job role group. While you don't see the same types of differences with job roles as you do with qualifications and skills, we still wanted to standardize it to enable better tagging and search from both students and employers. And the end result is that our job role groups help us close the gap between students saying that I want to work as something and employers saying I'm hiring for something. Our job role groups are based on a resource called ONET, which supports public and private sector efforts to identify and develop skills of the American workforce. It provides a common language for defining and describing occupations and is updated yearly, so we know that any new industries, new skills, new roles that might be emerging will be accounted for in this resource. Our career services partners use ONET a lot to make sure that their students are prepared to enter the workforce. And at a higher level, schools also use ONET to make sure that their curriculum are up to date and that they're teaching students relevant and timely skills. For us, ONET is a great foundation to make an early talent-specific career language. Given that job role groups are already a common language in the Handshake marketplace and are a tried and tested way to articulate a given job opportunity, our approach is to map qualifications to those job role groups to facilitate skills and qualifications-based hiring. So the first thing that we need to map are student-reported skills. So to do so, we take student-reported skills, the ones that you would find on a student's Handshake profile, and then group the similar ones. We then map those to skill groups, and then map those skill groups to job role groups. So take, for example, these three skills that you might find on a student's profile. We have speaking, public speaking, and presentation, and they're all related. And we can group those skills into a skill group called speaking. Next, we take other skill groups like persuasion and active listening and map those to the job role group for sales agents. So now if we're looking for students that have qualified skills for sales agents, we don't need to know every single individual skill that might show up on a student's profile. We just need to go one level down to our skill groups, and then we can trust that we'll get all the students' profiles who have relevant skills. We do the same thing with students' work experiences. We go through the description and the title of a given work experience on a student's profile, and then use some information retrieval and data science methods to find the most probable job role group match. Based on this student's work experience title of Emerging Technology Summer Analyst, I don't really know what role this might be in or what qualifications the student got by doing this work experience. But if we look at the description, we see keywords like database, SQL developer, and data analysis, and those that our mapping algorithm know that the most probable job role group match for this work experience is data analyst. Finally, we apply the same logic for coursework. Every school has a huge course catalog and a wide variety of courses, and they'll title them in different ways and level them in different ways. But we've already grouped similar courses together into course groups to make searching through this data easier. Now we're mapping those course groups to job role groups. So take these course groups in ballet, dance, musical theater, and theater and dance. They're all relevant to the dancers and choreographers job role group. The really cool thing about making all of these different taxonomies is that employers who are trying to find students qualified for a given role don't need to be able to articulate all of the individual skills, work experiences, or coursework that might be relevant. We can now handle all of that for them on the back end. So the first place that we're applying these like one-click hiring templates are for roles with high hiring volumes and soft or hard to quantify for skills. These are roles like sales, success, and support. Our employers have told us that they're looking for signals of professional readiness in students, and we can help them evaluate that by looking at their students' past work experience, self-reported skills, and coursework. They're also looking for teamwork and other related soft skills, which are shown through organizations and extracurricular activities. And finally, they want students who have a genuine interest in the role. So putting that together with the trends that we see in our data, we've created templates for sales, success, and support. So let's take a look at what feeds into this sales hiring template. We were first able to map skill groups like persuasion and negotiation, and also more technical skills like CRM software. And CRM software would include specific skills that you'd find on a student's profile like Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce. We next mapped relevant work experiences like being a cashier or an assistant store manager to the sales role. And finally, we mapped relevant coursework like sales and sales operations or business communications. Previously, employers needed to be able to search for and articulate everything that's in this red box at the lowest level of this mapping tree. Now, everything in the blue boxes is abstracted for them, and we can connect the dots in our data. This red box represents what students are, or how students are articulating their qualifications and their skills. And this top box at the top of the tree represents how employers are trying to hire. So in this way, employers can still find qualified candidates without having to completely change their behavior, and students can get hired without having to completely change their behavior. One win that we're already seeing here is that these templates for sales and success are already reducing bias. We talked about some of the false indicators that employers were using to source for talent, like athletic affiliation, and how that resulted in 66% of the pipeline being men. Now with our templates for sales and success, we've achieved a simulated pipeline that's a near 50-50 split between students who are male and female. So the next place that we're going to apply these templates are to highly technical roles like engineering and data. The challenge here for our employers is that they want to be able to separate the good from the great candidates. During user research, PayPal told us that everyone has the minimum qualifications these days, like coursework, and we want to see who's truly exceptional. And that's where soft skills and passion projects come into play. Employers hiring for these highly technical roles are looking for similar things to sales, success, and support roles like professional readiness and relevant skills. But the added challenge is that they also want some indication of proficiency leveling for those skills. Some questions that we're considering as we tackle this problem include things like whether or not self-reported skills or self-reported leveling is a good indication of student proficiency. Should we be using an external leveling tool like coding challenges to help understand the level of proficiency for our students? Can we use coursework level like computer science 200 versus computer science 400 to help gauge proficiency? And finally, how might we be able to use personal projects to understand the level of proficiency or like unique passion differentiator of our students? More to come on this as we experiment with various solutions. So just to summarize where we are at in applying this at Handshake, we're currently rolling out our sales, success, and support hiring templates. And as we roll this out, we will be figuring out how to use a similar process that also includes proficiency leveling for highly technical roles. We also want to explore creating skills taxonomies around organizations and extracurriculars. We're really excited to see how these templates work in action and are eager to hear from our employer users how they feel like the solution is supporting their needs. One really interesting challenge here is getting our employer users to trust that everything in those blue boxes that I showed in the template will take into account all of their needs. And so we're going to be iterating with them and getting their feedback at every step of the way. If you're in a similar situation where you have different types of users who are interacting in disjointed ways, I hope that there are 3 takeaways that you can get from this presentation that might be able to help. The first is to find successful patterns of behavior and seek to scale them. While we notice that our students and employer users are speaking different languages, our our education partners have already been bridging the gap here. And hearing their interpretation of the problem and seeing how they have already been solving it gave us a pattern and a foundation to build off of. The second is to always think about the end goal. In our initial approach to creating this type of qualifications framework, we thought about taking the same approach that we took with our job roles taxonomy. And that just involves grouping similar entities together. And that only takes you so far here, because the end goal is to make sure that employers can find qualified candidates and that students can show off their credentials. And the end goal led us to the template approach, where we focus on the information necessary to hire and be hired for a specific role. Finally, I hope that you remember the importance of iteration. Iteration and experimentation are important when creating any product, but for data science product development, it's absolutely necessary. Our data scientists iterated on various skills groupings, various ways to apply ONA, and various structures for our templates before we found what we think will work for sales, success, and support job roles. And when we launch these initial templates, we're going to treat the initial launch as a way to learn more, just like another iteration, to learn what works and what doesn't work so that we can iterate for the next set of roles. If any of these types of problems at the intersection of data science and product are interesting to you, Handshake is hiring across all roles, not just these ones, and I would love to connect with you. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. And yeah, I think that now we will go into some Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to post it in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute yourselves. But I do think Moy had a question. So do you think the bridging system Handshake developed for employers and students can be applied to things like the college admittance and high school student matching process or students to scholarships?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We have not looked into like high school data, but I do think that there's something to be said about like what students think colleges want to know about them and then what colleges are actually evaluating them on. And so I do think that a similar system could be applied there.
Cool. All right, let's see. Okay, from Evan. He says, awesome presentation. I'm curious how big an issue students overrepresenting themselves is or is considered as, and if there are any data science-y ways to check for that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the way that we've currently been approaching that, there's actually two ways. So the first is that any coursework, any like GPA related data, anything like that that a student puts on their profile is verified through the registrar because of our partnerships with our education partners. But in terms of work experiences or anything like that, we did a survey with our employer partners to understand how much they trust what students are putting on their profiles. And there's actually very high trust for things that are not super technical. And within things that are super technical, employers do trust if a student says like, I know Java or like, I know Android development. They trust that they have some experience there. What they don't trust necessarily is the level of proficiency that the student has. And so far we have not found a like data science-y way to tackle that problem. But I think that partnerships with like external tools that could provide some framework for leveling would be really interesting there and would provide like a verification that a student, like a badge that a student could carry with them.
Cool. Let's see. Any other questions? Feel free to ask away. Right. Let's see. I think for me, I do know that like sometimes looking at job descriptions or whatnot, like it can feel very daunting, I guess, to try to apply for anything like that whenever I feel like, oh, I don't necessarily meet the qualifications. But I mean, do you have any, like, I know that, you know, just it with the software and everything, it's really cool that it's happening, but do you have like any tips that you found like that you could that people could take to modify their resumes or whatnot to like fit those job descriptions more?
Yeah, I think that The key thing that we hear from our employers is that they want to see keywords from the job description on their resume. So if there are like specific skills that are being called out in the job description, definitely, and if you have them, definitely highlight those on your resume. So one way that at Handshake we're exploring helping to mitigate that issue is like highlighting within a job description the necessary skills, or like making it really easy for a student to parse through it and understand if this is something that they might be interested in. We also know that men are more likely to apply to a job even if they don't meet all of the qualifications, and women need to meet all the qualifications or feel like they need to before they apply to a job. And so we're exploring ways to like for all students just tell them like you would be a great fit for this role even if you don't meet all of the qualifications.
Gotcha.
So when it comes to meeting the qualifications, let's say you're going through a job posting, what's like the bare minimum that students or future employees would need to meet, let's say, when it comes to those keywords?
The bare minimum that we've heard from employers is interest, actually, because like as a student that's graduating, if you like haven't had an internship in the industry that you're trying to get into, you probably won't have all of the necessary skills or all of like the work experience necessary. So if you have interest in the industry or the role and have demonstrated that through classes or through like clubs, that is the bare minimum. After that, people want to see teamwork, organization, and interpersonal skills. Technical skills on top of that, most employers feel like students can learn.
Okay. Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, we got another question in the chat. From Evan. Why do you think students have trouble communicating the specific skills employers are looking for? Okay. That's the question. Sorry, I'll just end it there.
Yeah, that stat also really blew me away. I think the issue is, I think there's two issues. The first is that a lot of students are not really focused in their job search. Like they don't know exactly what they're looking for. And so a skill like leadership or organization, like these are skills that can be applied to like any role or necessary for any role. And so those are what students end up highlighting the most. I think the other issue is that students just don't know what employers are looking for. Like when I was saying that the best way to tailor your resume is to like find skills in the job description and put them on your resume, that's a way to understand like what employers are actually looking for. But if you're just building your profile without like looking at any sample job roles or job postings that you might be interested in, like you don't necessarily know what an employer is looking for if you haven't been in the industry already. And that's where career services are helping students. Like when they come in for resume reviews or they come in to like review their Handshake profiles, career services are helping them like find the keywords for the industries that they're interested in. So the question is how to educate students at scale on it.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Any other questions that we have? All right, well, if not, then congrats! We made it to the end of our IWD event. So I will thank you all, first of all, for coming and attending, and I will hand it off to Hannah to kind of wrap everything up.